Black MIDI is Ivor. But Greep season has just begun. The new sound. I think I want to talk about that right now. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the new sound, I guess. That's music. In short, it's essentially an album where a guy named Greep sings about prostitution and such over all this extravagant instrumentation. Instrumentation that's a wild mix of samba, Jaws, like the shark? What the hell? Jazz, prog, and some other stuff too. One thing that is incredible about this album is how effortless it seems for Greep to control his vision. He had about 30 session musicians on this thing, and he was able to pull off what he did on this thing, which is like kinda cool. With how fast, erratic, and all over the place this album is, it is outstanding how Greep is able to conduct these musicians with this level of coherence. Or maybe it's not impressive, and I'm just like a dunce who thinks it's impressive. I don't know. Because it also seems that this is how a lot of Black MIDI's music was done, especially on Hellfire. But unlike Black MIDI, where Greep was restrained by the confines of the band, he is quite unrestrained here, ready to go freak mode, ready to take all of his Greepisms and turn them up to 11. I'm talking taking the croon off of songs like Marlene Dietrich, 27 Questions, and The Defense, and just going absolutely wild with fun. The new sound has been described as the Incel Era's first classic album, which in my opinion, my personal thought, is a pretty daft way to boil this record down, to explain the concept and characters of this album. And describing it as an incel album just goes to show that the internet doesn't really understand what an incel is, as like a concept. Much of the new sound does surround this idea of fantastical masculinity, because you have characters on this record who try to embody the peak, the pinnacle of masculinity, but fall short in so many ways. It is kind of manosphere adjacent to an extent, but to describe the characters that Geordie Greep has written for this album as Andrew Tate adjacent doesn't seem quite accurate to me. Or maybe it is accurate, I don't know. I just like kind of don't want to center the discussion of this album around Andrew Tate. That's kind of irritating to me, just like a little bit. The new sound exists within this air of unreality, where the music portrays these charismatic rock star-like figures who get chicks, who are jocks and not nerds. But there's just something fake and gay about the charisma that these characters embody. Take the lead single, Holy Holy, which opens with these soaring guitars and introduces us to this nameless crooner character. A character that I dub the crooner, because he's like absolutely crooning out. He's an absolute crooner. Just crooning all over the place. And this crooner is trying to seduce this very sexy lady that he spotted across the bar. And he's doing it with this extraordinary charisma that just seems so unreal. The swagger of the music and Greep's vocals just sweeps you up into the magnetism of the crooner. His charisma is just so believable until your suspension of disbelief is broken. as soon as he starts singing about her pussy being holy. Which is a little bit weird, in my opinion. How about we take things further? I'll meet you in the bathroom. I bet your pussy is holy too. Like, isn't that what every lady wants to hear? Some guy, some stranger at a bar telling her that her pussy is holy. I know that's exactly what this little lady wants to hear. As his charm goes from this unbelievable magic to just unrealistic. This isn't just some chance encounter with a pub hottie. The crooner is just soliciting some prostitute for sex. That's it. But he doesn't really even want sex from her, as he asks this woman how much it'll cost for him to take her on this fantastical date so he can embody the charisma, the man that he so desperately wants to be. And this is the illusion of this album. The other songs also share in similar themes as Holy Holy, as they all surround these men who think that their reputations precede them, or men who at least want their reputations to precede them. Take Terera, a song about this man, this artist, who is so confident that his art will be remembered long after his death, because it is simply the pinnacle of human suffering. But there is a sense of deep desperation within his narration, as he begs passerbys to remember both him and his life's work, pleading with them to remember him as a great man after he commits suicide. Like, I feel like that's like probably... She comes writhing back like a talented pestilence. She unzips the air. Blinding light emerges. Pink, dark, iridescent sludge everywhere. That has to be the most poetic way to describe a suicide, like, ever. Good job. Through the War centers on this warlord who believes himself to have more power than he actually has, because they let him have a gun and stroll around in the general's clothes. But all he really is a man who's desperately trying to prove his power to those around him. A man that turns into a bumbling mess because he wants to seduce this sexy lady, who's probably a prostitute, I think. Sacrificing and allowing his rule to crumble as he's focused on trying to prove his power to this woman. And when his power finally does slip from him and he loses control of the city, he blames all those around him. He blames everyone but himself and his love for the sexy lady, who leaves him nothing but an STD. You left me nothing but an incurable disease. Motorbike tells this story of a man who, in a moment of crisis, abandons his home and rides his Yamaha motorbike off into the sunset. A man who recounts this abandonment as a self-righteous moment of self-determination, dramatizing it as this glorious tale that this community will tell for generations. Sometimes, like, you're kind of hungry and you just need to eat grapes. You just need to eat the grapes. This is what the new sound is about. The folly of men who desperately want to embody something and someone larger than themselves, who turn to pathetic fantasies of power and charisma to achieve this. A thesis that I believe is proven by Walk Up and Blues, the only two songs that are sung in the third person rather than the first. The only songs that I believe aren't rooted in Delusion. Oh god. In my mind, they both read as this little voice in some man's head who's desperately trying to break their illusion, who presents him with the person that he wants to embody, and the pathetic schmuck that he actually is. The little voice on Blues is vicious. It reads this man hard. It explains just how built upon nothing this man truly is. The little voice in Walk Up confronts this man with his own shame, as it eats away at his mind, as he passes his favorite prostitute on the street, a prostitute that he lives out his fantasies with. This little voice explains the shame that he feels not being able to embody the person that he wants to be when he's with her. Let's go back to the crooner. And let's talk about the 9th track of this album, As If Wallace, which is sort of the inverse of Holy Holy, which instead of starting with this illusion of a man who possesses this fantastical magical charisma, it starts with pathetic yearning for the love of a prostitute, as we hear the crooner pine for a deeper romantic connection with this lady who he pays to take on extravagant dates, who fantasizes about a relationship that goes beyond sex, to be the person that he pays her to make him feel like. And you can't help but shed a tear as he croons for a relationship where he's fine sitting in the cuck chair. Now we come to the centerpiece of the album, The Magician. A 12-minute epic that enthralls you in this ballad of a man who's unraveling in the face of his own delusions. A ballad that seems like the climax of all the failures of the men that Greep is singing about. And honestly, words cannot describe how beautiful this song is, and why it gave me goosebumps, and why it made me. It's just magical. It's everything brilliant and heartbreaking about this album. Anyways, that's the new sound, I guess. Thanks, Greep. Proud of you.